And joining me now via Skype from Indiana to discuss the Black Sea feud between Russia and the United Kingdom is a global affairs analyst, Kunle Falowo. Good to have you join us, Kunle Falowo.
Thanks for having me.
So Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. It claims that Crimea is its territory, but that has not been recognized by internationally. What point do you think that the United Kingdom was trying to make here?
Well, first of all, just with your introduction, the annexation of the Crimea Peninsula has been a bone of contention for a long time, since 2014, and then the Russian government is very combative, and this water is in dispute and it hasn't been resolved yet. Now, Ukraine shares very strong and very tight territory with Russia. Having said that, the Ukrainian government are strong allies of the Western countries, the UK, the US, and the rest of them. Now, this case is still pending in the international courts of justice under the United Nations, and it hasn't, like you rightly said, it hasn't been recognized internationally. So it's still in open water, and every vessel from every country should be able, according to the books, to ply and move along that water with no disturbances at all. But as it is, the Russian government is laying claims to it, and it's just a show of power and a show of force. Fortunately, nobody has been killed, or the warning shot that was fired never met anybody. I think the intention was not for them to go on a full-scale war. It was just a warning shot. Then again, it's still in the court, and unfortunately, it tends to go along the path that we're not going to see an end towards this kind of hostilities until the matter is resolved in the courts.
You talked about how this is a show of force by the United Kingdom, but there are those who believe that as much as the international countries and organizations are trying to ensure or challenge Russia to uphold international law, that this was a high-risk strategy on the part of the United Kingdom.
Well, it's a routine check, and there's really nothing wrong with that. Just for the simple fact that it's still a dispute between the Ukrainian side and the Russian side of the water. That is a very serious problem. And then, because of the simple fact that, again, it hasn't been recognized internationally, so Russia cannot legitimately lay claims to it. So Western countries and Western allies of the Ukrainian side, they're free to apply that, use their vessel to apply that route, because it hasn't been recognized. So again, it's still a troublesome matter that has to be resolved, that needs to be resolved, because of an escalating a fight or war afterwards. But as it is, it's still something that has to be looked into, and unfortunately, again, this is not going to be the end of it. And don't forget, this is not the first time. It's been going on continuously, and the court will have to settle this. And NATO has a strong thing role to play in this situation, and also the courts under the United Nations also will have to look into this.
Absolutely. NATO is also planning to carry out naval exercises on the Black Sea, and Russia has been warning that it should call it off. What is the potential of these to get out of control?
Well, this is where international negotiations and dialogue comes in, and Vladimir Putin, whenever we talk about Russia, we can't, forget about the strong man behind the buttons over there. It's not a full-scale war, but they're in a stronger position to display their absolute willingness to go to force with any country that kind of tries to dare them, and that's what he's showing, a show of force to show that we're not weak on our side, and we're ready to come back or to face any country who dares to challenge our authority. And that's the stance of the Russian government. But again, they're being very diplomatic about this, because no one from any nationality has been killed yet. Now, these are warning shots, so it's a little bit of balance in there, a show of force, and then, going back to the diplomatic side, because it's still out there and it's still up for negotiations with the NATO and the Western countries altogether.
Vladimir Putin just had a meeting or a summit with President Joe Biden on the heels of the G7 summit. And many people thought that perhaps this could lead to more peaceful relations between Russia and the US, and maybe that could also spiral to other countries. So how should this be handled, especially because on some front, especially resolving issues around the Middle East, you also need Russia. So how should this be handled?
When you talk about world leaders coming together and having discussions, the unfortunate part of the entire pendulum is the United States democracy. It's set up as other Western democracies are set up in a way that a certain government comes into power, works for 4 years, goes, in between that 4 years, that particular government has a mandate, and it also has a foreign policy that it opposes. Now, unfortunately, when that certain government goes out of power, the next one comes into play, and then sometimes 9 times out of 10, they have another agenda in the foreign diplomatic sphere, meaning that there's always a pendulum shift. So there's not a consistency in policy formulation when it comes to dealing with the Russians, for instance, or handling NATO. Don't forget that international organizations and all of that was just joined in by the Biden administration. The former administration opted out of all of this because of the nationalistic and the populist nature of what the government was at that time. Now, these are the new things, and more like a revitalization of American sovereignty and America's affiliation with other Western countries. Now, these are going on; they're ongoing. Now, it's going to take a little bit of work on the part of the Biden administration to make sure that all of the promises comes through eventually. But by and large, all of these people are still coming together. Policies are still being formulated, but unfortunately, hostilities aren't going to stop because they haven't gone to the bottom of the matter. It's still an ongoing issue that we'll have to keep on addressing as it comes and as it unfolds. So we have to be on the lookout.
Kunle Falowo, thanks for talking to us.
My pleasure.